Good evening. I'd like to open the Marlborough School Committee meeting at 7:32. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before we begin, I need to let everyone know Mrs. Matthews is joining us remotely, and the rest of us are all here. Thank you.
Thank you. Wraparound service provider. In September, Assistant Superintendent O'Brien invited Kayla Flaherty Dawson to a school committee meeting, and she provided the committee an overview of how our wraparound service providers support our students and families. Kayla was also interviewed on the second episode of the Superintendent's Corner. Community members can watch that interview on WMCT if they missed her presentation. Our wraparound service providers are currently managing 115 cases and have received 79 new referrals so far this year. They are also coordinating the school's November and December holiday food needs and are supporting 124 families, or 551 individuals, with obtaining a Thanksgiving meal. We have recognized that we do need to expand these services and provide additional help to our two providers. Recently, Assistant Superintendent O'Brien has identified grant funding that will support an additional social worker for the rest of this school year. I'm hoping the school committee will support this need. The John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has created this merit scholarship program to reward hard work and achievement by Massachusetts students and to encourage students to go to college at one of our top-notch public higher education institutes. The scholarship entitles the recipients to 4 years of free tuition at any University of Massachusetts campus or any state or community college. The choice is based on outstanding MCAS results. The following members of the class of 2023 have been selected. I do want to mention that before I start with the names, that the Marlborough Public Schools is committed to trying to recognize students by their given names. I've been practicing, but I apologize for any mistakes. This has been my nightmare. I want to get this right, and I am afraid that I will not. The following students have been recognized for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. Dina Adam, Brandon Alfaro Mateo, Abraham Andrade, Joshua Obin, Valentina Ayala Bustamante, Alexandra Banos, Mia Basquet, Emma Burgess, Sophia Bertone, Vinacesis Binacourt, William Calderon, Lillian Campbell, Joseph Kalman, Meg Carroll, Sebastian Cavajal, Diananya Castellanos, Eduardo Castro, Julia Charlwood, David Childress, Jackson Clemens, Tade Coffey, Eric Corbin, Marissa Coy, Jacqueline Cruz, Ritoni Danielle, Felipe Del Arano, Rebecca Del Arano, Anya Luisa de Calavaro, Isabella Del Souza, Peter Del Cruz, Kevin Desanya, Emma Devins, Maria dos Santos, Peter Firmino, Allison Gagne, Silas Jamal, Bethany Gibson, Tatum Harding, Samuel Harris, Owen Hathaway, Abigail Hennessy, Joshua Horn, Connor Hurley, Adam Carachi, Isabella Lariano, Vito Lobo, Derek Lobo Castillo, Mel Lothium, Zachary Liu, Megan Lowe, Colin McGuire, Audrey McCarthy, Samantha Miller, Alyssa Metrakis, Jack Morick, Chris Na Chenmai, yeah, Joshua Neto, Samantha Nee, Caroline Neve, Teralina Owens, Talita Pereira, Emila Pinata, Lauren Plank, Adam Poverman, Rachel Powell, Lydia Priest, Tatiana Reznikoff, Sarah Ribeiro, Thomas Riviera, Eddie Rivera Burgos, Arlen Rosalius, Jessica Rosenwig, Joao Pedro Santos, Rachel Schooler, Jasmine Stack, Sarah Stagg, Julie Tonell, Eduarda Valentin, Lavinia Vasconcelos Valentin, Trevor Whitmore, and Thomas Zayak. Congratulations to all the students in the class of 2023. Thank you. And that is my report for tonight.
I have a question. What's the next step in terms of the grant for the extra social worker? Like, what, will you just present it to us as a grant, or?
It is a current grant that we have?
Yes, it's a current grant that we have. It's the school health grant that currently funds part of one of the current positions. We were able to reallocate some of the funds that are in that grant. It's a $95,000 a year grant, so some of the other funding line items that were in it, we're able to reallocate elsewhere to be able to use the full $95,000 towards wraparound service providers.
Oh, so that, will that just come as a?
So we just wanted to inform the school committee there isn't any vote. We just wanted to inform you before we posted it. So our plan is to go ahead and post the position tomorrow morning, and that would fund us a wraparound service coordinator for the rest of this year. That would provide about 0.6 of an FTE going into next year, and we would look to work with Mr. Diaz to come up with the rest of that to fully fund it for the 218 days of the upcoming school year after this.
So are there any transfers that we need to do, or is that in the list?
There's no transfers needed. There may be a grant amendment for the health grant to fully allocate all $95,000 towards social workers. So that would take care of FY23. And then we just gave you a potential preview of a potential budget priority for FY24.
Next year. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Come on. Oh, Mr. Diaz, you're up.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is tonight's update from Finance and Operations. I wanted to continue sharing positive news from the food services operations in the district. First, I want to recognize the efforts of all staff who have worked tirelessly to help make universal school meals a normal and stigma-free part of every school day. We believe that's very important. In October, we took a massive leap towards achieving 75% lunch participation within the district overall. And when we do achieve that goal, we would be amongst the highest districts in Massachusetts for lunch participation. That's what's sort of guiding our efforts, is to get there and stand out. We reached 69.2% participation for lunch on average for the month of October. I would like to recognize Deb Delamora, the kitchen manager at Whitcomb, and her staff for being the first team to reach 75% participation over a 1-month period, and at one of our most populous schools, nonetheless. So hats off to them. Also to the folks over at Richard, who reached 72% participation in October, and at Marlborough High, another very large school, who reached 70% during October. These are incredible achievement by those teams, and the other schools are not far behind. They're seeing a large increase in participation as well. For comparison's sake, lunch participation for the month of October, our last pre-pandemic October, we had 59% participation district-wide, and this month, this year in October, we had 69.2%. So there's a 10% increase, about 500 additional students eating lunch at school every day, which is fantastic. Breakfast also saw a large bump. Participation was 30% in FY20. In FY22, we're just at about 42%. So again, my gratitude to the entire staff who's working towards our goals here. Also wanted to update the committee at our JARIC and Kane HVAC projects, which is becoming the JARIC HVAC project. The ESSER funds available for HVAC projects will be able to support upgrading the HVAC system at JARIC. We are pursuing upgrading the rooftop units, the unit ventilators, and providing cooling to that school. We continue making progress towards that goal of completing that project in the summer of 2023. Right now, today, we're working on issuing purchase orders to ensure that the equipment will be here on time to complete the project in the summer. We have, due to the worldwide issues in logistics and supply chain, we had concerns about our ability to procure the equipment in time for the summer, believe it or not, even this early. And it's looking like we are going to be able to do that, which is very positive. The next step in that project is securing a general contractor to oversee the work. So we're working on those bid documents now. In addition to the ESSER funds, DESE released a limited amount of additional funding to be utilized towards HVAC improvement. For Marlborough, it was about $954,000. We are at the beginning stages of assessing how we can best leverage those funds to start tackling Kane Elementary. Also pursuing an upgrade to the HVAC system there. So more to come on the plan for Kane in the future. FY23 yellow bus transportation. I wanted to reserve this spot to update the school committee on where we stand today. As of this morning, we meet with NRT every week in addition to the twice daily triage on how to most efficiently get the kids to and from school. We are currently at 8 vacancies within our 41 bus crew. This includes a driver that's scheduled to leave in January. So 7 right now. In January, if nothing changes, will be 8 vacancies. There are 8 drivers in the pipeline for the Hudson Hub. 3 to 4, I'm pushing for 8, but 3 to 4 will be coming to Marlborough. Of those 3 to 4, 2 will be testing before the end of November. Not everyone passes on their first test. In fact, most aren't passing right now. They're very difficult tests for CDL, as they should be. So I'm hoping that within the month of December, we'll have at least 2 additional drivers, if not more. The training process is lengthy, and because we are short drivers, the availability of trainers is also short. So the training ability is limited. For reference, when I gave the school committee an update about transportation on August 30th, around our first day of school, we were short 6 drivers. We're losing ground. For that reason, I have, in yet another attempt to resolve the issue at hand, I have carved out yellow bus regular ed services, and I have issued a new invitation for bid at an improved hourly rate for CDLs driving our large yellow buses. This is just another attempt to bring some stability to our transportation services. I don't think that this will be a magic pill to immediately solve the problem, but I do believe that this will help us in recruiting and retaining some drivers and be competitive within our immediate region. The bids are due on November 30th, and I hope to bring forward to the committee sometime in December or our first January meeting a potential contract that will have a changed hourly rate for the drivers, and again, which will hopefully start bringing in more drivers towards Marlborough. I'm sorry, I always end with a bad transportation update. I'm happy to entertain any questions from the school committee.
Any questions, comments? Nothing from Hennessy, huh? Not much to say.
Got my mailer from Marlborough Public School
I got mine
District.
too.
I'm assuming that's also trying to get bus drivers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question about, back with the HVAC systems, I know originally we thought that the ESSER money was going to cover both schools. What changed? Did we use more money for other things? Did just everything become more expensive? What
No,
changed?
that's a great question. From the onset, we had just about $6.4 million between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 allocated towards HVAC improvements. Quite honestly, at the beginning stages of the process, we had no idea how much it would take to rehab the HVAC systems in the schools. We wanted to address Jarrick and Kane. We identified those two schools as priorities. As we started delving into the project, we procured a designer, we procured an owner's project manager, an OPM, and we estimated the projects once, and then we estimated the projects again. And from the two estimates, we saw that we could really only do one project. And yes, there have been pressures upon the prices of everything, including HVAC projects. We are not the only district that have utilized their federal monies to address this issue. So there's been more demand combined with supply chain issues. So more demand, less supply, the prices have gone up, as well as the prices for the cost of the general contractors and their labor to complete the project. Unfortunately, we're seeing a markup in everything. So we are projecting right now, and again, there's still projections. We have procured the equipment. The equipment came in slightly above budget, and we had contingencies in place for that. And we are projecting that we'll utilize the majority of the funding that's available just to complete the Jarrick project.
Okay. Kudos on food service.
Thank you. Thanks to the team.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Skaza.
Madam Chair, thank you. Tonight, I am going to be presenting an overview of the 2022 MCAS data and sharing the district's next steps for instruction and structures to address areas in need of improvement as indicated by the data. I will also highlight some of the areas where the data indicates that current practices have been impactful. I have tonight with me Director of Elementary Curriculum Pre-K through 5, Ron Sanborn, Supervisor Director of Mathematics 6 through 12, Heather Russo, and Supervisor Director of Humanities, including ELA and History 6 through 12, Jody Reyes. Thanks for joining me tonight, guys. These individuals will help answer any questions at the end of the presentation. So here we go, Mr. Diaz. Some of the speaking points tonight regarding the MCAS assessment and the results from 2022 are that we are what I am considering back to quote-unquote normal MCAS testing, meaning we don't have to consider remote testing or pandemic-related variables like we have been up against in the past. It's relatively straightforward when it comes to MCAS testing this time around. What has emerged from the data from 2022 are some common themes and patterns that are consistent across the Commonwealth and additionally consistent with the urban school districts, and I'll highlight some of those. I'm going to talk about some of the focus areas for improvement that we have identified as a team, and I'll additionally bring some highlight to some of the successes that were yielded from the 2022 data. So back to MCAS testing, food for thought. Just for our general understanding here, the 2022 school year was the first full MCAS administration for grades 3 through 8 since 2019. So it had been a long time since many of our students, including our grade 10 students who had not taken an MCAS test since 2019 when they were in grade 7. And one thing that I also want to note that is important is because there was a hiatus, if you will, and a modified assessment of MCAS as a result of the pandemic with the structures, 2022 is considered to be the new baseline for districts moving forward when it comes to accountability ratings. So some of the common themes and patterns that emerged from the 2022 data statewide is there were mixed results as compared with the 2021 scores from the year prior. The common theme with math is that the scores increased across the state for the most part, with ELA that the scores declined across the state for the most part, and overall there were lower writing scores, and a lot of the students actually did score very low, some even a 0 on the essay portion or the short answer response portion of the MCAS writing. So you can see that in the slides here that I have pulled with some graphics that for the math scores increasing, you can see that perforated line there with 2022. I know it's tough to see, but that's the second plot from the left. The scores increasing at the state level with the perforated line, and we are the green line below the district level from 2021. You can see that our scores increased 3 percentage points with proficiency as well. The blue number 19 below the proficiency percentage is the student growth percentile, where compared to the previous year, we had 19 points of an increased student growth percentile. So that is a positive number there. However, what you do see is a mark below the state average when it comes to the proficiency level we are running below, as well as slightly below the student growth percentile on the state level. Next slide, please, is our English language arts, where you can see we followed that trend as well with a decrease in the ELA scores from 2021 to 2022. Where we are 4% below the previous year, and you can see the state was below the previous year mark as well. With our student growth percentile compared to the previous year, we were above 11 points, but compared to the state, we were below 5. So there's certainly work to be done there. However, it is a consistent theme with ELA across the board in the Commonwealth. Next slide, please. So how are we going to address these areas in need of improvement? We've been talking a lot. There's been a lot of considerations that we have discussed when it comes to just missed instructional time in general, but we're not using that as an excuse moving forward. We're just recognizing it as a significant variable at play here. So we're just focusing all our attention on how to improve student performance and achievement moving forward, specifically with addressing the low writing scores. We want to beef up the writing, so to speak. We want to stress early literacy skills and writing instruction with our English learners. We want to implement new curriculum resources in ELA grades K through 10 and Mr. Sanborn had spoken about the transition to the Into Reading program. We'll get into more detail about that tonight. And Mr. Reyes and I have been in close contact when it comes to the pilots that he is running in grades 6 through 10. I'll discuss those tonight as well. We want to actively monitor attendance moving forward, and we want to continue intervention and acceleration academies for MCAS prep. So I'm sorry that the print is small here, so I'll try to bring attention and highlight to all of these areas that we are looking to focus on to address low writing scores. We do have dedicated writing blocks in grades K through 5 with an introduction of an English learner model where grades 1 through 5 are pushing into classroom for writing blocks. That is different from previous years where there was either a pull out or a pull to the side model. The EL department in conjunction with the elementary principals and Mr. Sanborn have kind of redesigned how writing instruction is happening for English learners, the level 3 and 4s, and I think that that design and that instruction in that setting is going to be beneficial. The Into Reading program that we talked about at a previous school committee meeting has direct alignment with reading and writing, meaning we are not going to supplement writing with another program. The program itself, Into Reading, has the reading and the writing built right into it, so it won't be disjointed. What we found so far is that it is well-resourced and clearly aligned. There will be an introduction of the Reading Ways program that we have all been part in thus far, which gets all disciplines involved in the process of reading and writing and places a greater emphasis on writing as part of all content areas. This is most specific to secondary education. You know, Mr. Reyes and I have spoken about this as being crucial and a push for many years. However, it really hasn't gained any traction, and we really want to send the message that writing is owned in multiple content areas and that we can work on literacy skills, specifically in reading and writing in classes that aren't solely English classes. We are going to use consistent use of language objectives as part of lesson design, as well as the 6 EL strategies for daily instruction. That is a district goal this year. We have dedicated the majority of our PD and staff meeting time to work spent with these strategies so far, and specifically with designing language objectives, so it's something that we're working toward. We realize that it is hard work and it's a work in progress, but we are meaningful with the time that we're dedicating to it and the support that we're placing and giving to teachers and all educators, because it applies to everyone, administrators included, to get up off the ground. We are maintaining the use of the performance assessment component of ELA instruction. That's specific to response to literature. It was a component of the Journeys program. It was something that we found beneficial when it comes to that more formulaic writing where you have a prompt, it's asking you for a specific answer in the prompt and to provide evidence and explanation to support your answer. So that performance assessment resource is helpful for educators to help prep students for that response to literature type of the MCAS assessment. We are going to use no red ink and quill in conjunction with the pilot programs that I'll talk about a little bit more. These are programs that help support grammar instruction, and they come as part of the pilot at no cost to us. So for our grades 6, 7, and 8 teachers in particular, they have access to these 2 grammar supports. We are going to have a continuation of a focused response to literature like I had mentioned before with the performance assessments, but we're also looking at other ways to make sure that we are addressing response to literature aside from just the performance assessment handbook. And upcoming training on the K through 5 Writers Workshop component of Into Reading. Mr. Sanborn has been working with Houghton Mifflin to provide Marlborough Public elementary school staff with trainings moving forward, so we have the smoothest transition possible from Journeys to Into Reading. So stressing early literacy skills. Some things that we're going to do here are to continue our Power Hour framework, which is a work in progress. It has evolved, but we really are placing emphasis on the priority groupings that we have in K and 1 and providing students an entry point to early literacy skills in those grade levels. A continued use of the Foundations program, the phonics program, grades K through 3. We are going to continue to use the Research for Better Teaching, RBT data cycles to reteach and enrich learning standards. We have done that for a number of years now in math and ELA, and we have found benefit from that practice. It's just good practice in general, but when you specifically connect it to Massachusetts standards and the frameworks, you can hit those broad stroke standards, if you will, in ELA and math, and make sure that you're reinforcing the skills necessary for students to perform at a high level in those areas. And we are going to leverage the Northwest Evaluation Association's, otherwise known as NWEA, refined progress monitoring tool that assists educators in addressing the deficits of students with phonics and phonemic awareness. Teachers can use the data from that screener to identify immediate areas for intervention. And again, Mr. Sanborn has been working closely with our reps from NWEA to make sure that we're able to take advantage of all the offerings of that program. And just today he was training reading and math interventionist on components of the program that are going to be beneficial to our elementary school educators. Some of the new ELA curriculum resources that we are piloting. So as I had mentioned, we have the transition from the Journeys program to Into Reading in grades K through 5, but the pilots in grades 6 through 8 are Amplify and Into Literature. If the committee members have specific questions about those two, Mr. Reyes is here to help me with answers to those questions after the presentation. Those are the two pilots that we currently have up and operational. And then at the high school level in grades 9 through 10, we have Into Literature, which is also a Houghton Mifflin product, and Bedford, Freeman, and Worth are the two pilots that we have for ELA in 9 and 10. So as I had mentioned earlier, we are really just paying attention and giving strong consideration to the loss of instructional time as a significant variable when it comes to lower student achievement and performance on the MCAS assessment in general. And these are some statistics here that I just wanted to bring to the attention of the committee. They are directly referenced from the Department of Early and Secondary Education with specific reference to the urban school network. And I do have the list of the urban schools that we're associated with if you want to know that list before the end of the meeting. The one that I really want to point out to you that I think hits hard is the one in bold that states that 39% of students in urban school districts, of which we are one, missed 10% of school days in 2022. So if you round up that number, you have 40% of students that had missed 10% or more of school in 2022. It's just a significant number. So attendance in general, we're hoping that we get, less of things that are out of our control that keep students out of school and more that's within our control. And what we are going to do to, keep an eye on attendance is just, be supportive to families. And some of the data that we have from 2021 and 22 is quite alarming. This first slide that I have here is for a full membership, meaning that these are the students that were enrolled from the beginning of the school year, 2021-2022, as of September 1st through the end of the school year. So they were there for the entire school year, but they missed these numbers: 246 at Whitcomb, 119 at Jarwick, 106 at Kane, 143 at Richer, 179 at Goodnow, and 351 at Marlborough High. Missed 10%, which is 18 or more days of school last school year. The following slide is for a membership with students who had arrived after the first day of school, and the cutoff that the state uses is that they were in membership or enrolled for 20 days or more. So these percentages are even more alarming. So you look at students in general with that threshold that missed a significant amount of school last year. You have Whitcomb at 25% who have missed 10% or more, Jarwick at 27%, Kane at 28%, Richer at 35%, Goodnow at 30%, and high school at over 50% of students. That's 608 out of 1,184 students who missed 10% or more of the school year in 2021-22. So it's just something that we can't ignore. Next slide, please, Mr. Diaz. So continued intervention and acceleration academies is one way that we are going to look to get students, quickly up to speed or as quickly as possible. We know that it's imperative that a lot of our students pass the MCAS exam in grade 10. We want our younger learners to be able to be successful on the MCAS exam in our primary grades. So, we're putting a lot of intervention into place. It hasn't gotten up off the ground as we have liked thus far, but we have done some planning, and we're hoping that we can get more of our teachers to take part in intervention programs at the elementary level. When it comes to the elementary level, we're focused on equity and making sure that students and families have access to what we are offering. So we have started with remote intervention groupings in grades 3 through 5 because we don't have the busing afforded to us at this time. As you heard earlier tonight, Mr. Diaz is working on that. So I am hopeful that before the end of this school year, we will have the opportunity to have after-school busing or a late bus at our elementary school so we can do in-person after-school intervention with our elementary school students. And Mrs. Russo, Mr. Reyes, Dr. Riley, and Mr. Allen and I have been talking about MCAS acceleration academies for our secondary learners as well. So we're hoping that possibly as soon as December we can have an MCAS acceleration academy for students who really need to beef up their MCAS prep prior to a retest. So that is our plan. Mrs. Russo and I have also talked about a possible grant to offer an acceleration academy that would be grant funded over February and April break like what had taken place last school year. So ending my presentation with some highlights from the 2022 data, and quite honestly I could have found highlights in just about every area and every school, but I chose some that stood out to me and just grabbed them quickly. So overall, grades 3 through 5, math SGP, grade 3 specifically, math proficiency at Jarwick, grade 4 ELA proficiency at Kane, and grade 10 ELA proficiency. So those are the slides you're going to see next. So grade 3 through 5, math student growth percentile, as you look at that graph there, compared to the state, we were 1 point higher, which is higher than the state. I don't know how else to put it, but 25 points higher than our previous year. So that's certainly a success with math achievement across the board, grades 3 through 5. The next slide is our Jarwick School slide, which has the math proficiency at 3% above the state, and compared to the previous year, 20% above where we were in 2021. So that is certainly a highlight from the data for Jarwick School with grade 3 math. The next slide is grade 4 ELA at Kane, and that is 12% above the state with proficiency. And there isn't any student growth percentile there, I believe, right? And 9% above the school from the previous year. So solid results there from grade 4 Kane in ELA. And then finally, you have your high school grade 10 compared to the state, 4% above in proficiency, 1 point higher than the state with student growth percentile, unfortunately a little lower than the previous year as a school, but 2% higher than the school performed the year prior with the proficiency level. So we do have some highlights from just per those examples alone from the 2022 data that I wanted to bring to your attention. So with all of that, I now am opening up the floor to the committee for any questions.
Mrs. Matthews, do you have anything? I forgot to look up at you at the last questions. I hope you didn't have anything. Any questions? Yep.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I guess Mike, I do have a question regarding the attendance issues. Obviously, those numbers are very alarming, and you're saying that in the urban district, we are amongst, others that are having such numbers. What are we doing to help kids get to school? I mean, is it all just they're out with COVID, or is it, have we started to dig into what exactly is going on?
Can I answer that? Because across the state, so I attended updates statewide as well as urban, so from both lenses. And the attendance issue, what has been reported out this year has been the 20% attendance absentee rate instead of 10. And that was the number because January and February hit the state hard with COVID. And a number of families and staff were quarantined and were not able to attend school. And so that's a reality we all have to. And from the state level, the message that I heard was that, in fact, we lost more instructional time last year than we did when we were remote or when we were in small groups because we were getting instruction every day. But if you had to stay home and you were quarantined, you did not have the opportunity. Or if teachers had to stay home, either they were sick or family members, and they were quarantined, the instruction was interrupted. So that's the reality from last year, and pretty much that's statewide, but urban schools with larger populations and closer, just larger, just more people, had it in a much higher level. We should be aware, though, that the test and stay, once that was implemented, that was one step that we saved 1 million days of attendance. That's what they're estimating. Assistant Superintendent O'Brien is taking specific steps this year. She's running regular attendance reports. We're bringing them to our leadership meetings. To the number of students, the principals are having follow-up meetings with students that have, what was it, we started at 15, I think, at this point, was it? Yes.
Yes, so we had run reports for students with 15 days or more at this point of time in the year, and those were given to each of the principals at our last leadership meeting, and they are going back to their cabinet teams with their assistant principals, ETLs, nurses, counselors, to go over that list of students and come up with individual plans on re-engagement for any that are unexcused absences, for those who are absent due to medical reasons, coming up with plans on how to get them caught up. So it really looking at that data, and I have those reports running weekly so that they can continuously be up to date with students within their schools.
I'm just on a follow-up to that, if I may. And Superintendent Murphy, you just hit the nail on the head though when you said how much time was lost last January and February. I know some people don't believe this, but COVID has not gone away. And we're about to go into this stretch. I mean, we know we have COVID issues and we have RSV issues, and we know we've had tons of staff out, we've had tons of kids out. This is, these things are going to happen again. We're moving into that time again. So it's nice to hear, though, that we're focusing more. And the fact that we can't do remote just kills me, right? Because we know that it works. And, if they have to be home because they're quarantined or if they have to take care of a sibling or whatever the case may be. It's sad that we can't recapture that time. So,
yeah.
I'm done with my question.
Sorry, just to dovetail off of it, because that was something that was on my mind, is that we, and I would say big we, across the nation, but state-wise, we're also encouraging students and staff to not come to school to potentially spread COVID. So like, you know, we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we're not also discussing that, because we also don't want to continue to push around the pandemic more and more by getting people sick. So, I mean, you can't have it both ways. I mean...
Free testing went home, right? So we did send the tests home.
Right.
So that families could have access to it as we all gathered together for Thanksgiving and other events in the upcoming month.
Right, which then also, you know, great that we went ahead and we gave tests to go home so that it promotes testing. It also takes that encouragement, you know, it's of communication to say exactly why it's important, you know, that you need to test, because we're going to have a problem in either way. I mean, I saw these numbers. Yes, they're alarming, but the first thing that hit my head was, but we've been telling everyone, if you've got sniffles, you've got cough, whatever, don't come. Right. So, I'm not surprised by these numbers.
Yeah, and saying alarming, I think, is just bringing attention to the amount of time out of school, not the reason behind the amount of time out of school. It's just acknowledging the fact that there has been a lot of lost instruction in the last few years. And
which I have to say, then one of the things that, like you highlighted about in, you know, third grade, if you will, you know, I try to then think back, like, well, what were we doing for those few years before, you know? And if we pushed in by having some of our youngest students come to school, right? Yep. So they were getting the instructional time. So some of the things that are hitting me that I would say I'm a little bit more concerned about some of our upper levels where, you know, and that's not to say I'm not concerned about some of the other areas, but if you've missed middle school and you're into high school and you're supposed to be writing things, you're really in a bad position. So, I mean, I kind of feel like we have a lot of work that we kind of have to do, not only foundationally, but a huge amount of intervention at some of our upper levels, because we're going to lose them if we don't get to it. And to me, that's where I guess I'm alarmed by that, because we've lost some really important middle years, which is tough, because there's high expectations on that other end that you've already been building and we may not have. So I think that that's something which I would love to hear some more of the data from the middle level to know what's the impact that we have to make that's not just MCAS related, but to affect for the upper levels. So that's something that I have to say for me. I want to know more about that. I want to understand what can we do to help at that middle and upper level.
Yeah, you know, what I'm thinking is that we could certainly give an update after the holiday break as to like where things stand with the intervention and the acceleration academies and what is happening at the middle and the high school when it comes to intervention. I will tell you that I've had conversations with Heather and Jody and Steph Gill, supervisor of Science 6 through 12, that lead me to believe that they are not letting kids slip through the cracks. They have identified students who need remediation. They have placed students in classes that target the remediation that's necessary. Their goals that they have put into their educator plans as administrators focus on how to remediate learning loss. So there's a lot of work that is being discussed and thoughtful planning that has already taken place. I think it would just be helpful for us to come back and update you and keep you informed of what we're doing, because you're right, that is a crucial area, and we want to make sure that students are passing the MCAS and ultimately that you know, students are able to get their diploma prior to leaving Marlborough Public. So. And
I guess that what I'm kind of remembering, and I didn't pull it back up, but I feel like I remember when we were talking about a lot of our attendance issues, we had larger numbers that were missing at the middle school level, if I remember correctly. during pandemic, but like it was, once we had come back in, I felt like we had some really large attendance numbers that were, hitting our middle school specifically. So move it forward a couple more years, you can see why we're having pockets of concern. So it would be helpful to come back around, and I would definitely love to know a little bit more about these pilot programs, just to understand them, what they are.
Yeah.
I've had this problem, but there are many problems with MCAS over the years, partially because when I was a music teacher, all it meant to me was I had to stop teaching when I taught for periods of time because it was noise, evidently. Music, the rest of the time, noise during MCAS. But I've always had trouble dealing with these comparisons because I'm never sure what they're comparing. So, for instance, I'm happen looking at the JARA third, I think it's ELA one right now. So when you're comparing from the previous year, what are you exactly comparing? What's being compared? I mean you personally, but I mean, what is MCAS comparing? Who are they comparing? What are they? I can't figure out if it's apples to oranges, apples to apples, or Granny Smiths to pink ladies. I just never can figure out what they're comparing.
Yeah, I believe that comparison is just specifically the performance outcome when it comes to percentage of.
Is it the same kids that we're comparing?
No,
Okay,
it is the
that's
school.
my
It is the
struggle
grade.
with this,
Yeah, right.
because the people that use that number for the wrong reasons, it's not really to me, it's never been that. To me, what's more important is the student growth, the actual kid. Because I once said to a previous Commissioner of Education at a conference, I had a big stack of papers, and I said, the biggest problem with MCAS is people are more concerned with this pile of MCAS than this one piece of paper with this one kid in the middle. And that's why I've never liked these comparisons, because you're not comparing the same kids. You're not comparing, so I don't even know what the value of that comparison is half the time. I don't think it really tells you much of anything. I really don't. So I've always had trouble with that comparison, because I think it's just really it's not being, first of all, it was never used properly anyway by the people that were not supposed to be using it anyway, like realtors and people like that who use it to decide how good a school system is. So I've never been able to figure out why they do that. So that's always been my problem. Just strictly on statistics and the numbers, that to me has never been a valid anything. We should be more concerned about the individual kid in that group than anything to do with that big number. And unfortunately, that's what everybody seems to always focus on. And to say we're a successful or not successful school system based on that, to me, has always been one of my major problems with the MCAS test. Sorry, I had to vent.
I have a couple pointed questions. The power hour that the little ones are doing, those are homogeneous groupings, right? When they do the power hour, that's like kindergarten, first grade, they group them by their ability?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I.
So it is targeted specific intervention, if you will, based on where they are in their early literacy skills. So the goal of that structure is to ensure that students are met at their instructional level to impact and hopefully to build their abilities to be at or above grade level. And so we are in the midst of our first round, where there'll be an assessment week in December where we'll see progress over time, and then we will restructure the students based on their abilities. Hopefully that they're moving up in a priority grouping. And the philosophy is that there are more adults to support the students that are showing the greatest amount of deficit. So the numbers will look and shift where you may see more adults with fewer students that are really targeting specific skills to try to make as much ground and gain as you can. And as students are at or above grade level, the number of those students in those particular classrooms will be larger because they're able to access content that is at that grade level or above. So their pace at what they're doing is a little bit faster or accelerated to allow for them to continue to grow, as well as us to meet the needs of those students who need some further targeted supports.
And is there any, because it's just kindergarten and first grade, I mean, why don't we use it in second and third grade? Is it just labor intensive, or?
Well, not necessarily. The goal would be that by the time they get to those other grade levels, that they are at grade level, and therefore they're all at a content level that they should be at second and third grade. However, we all know that that's not always the case.
Right.
So we are utilizing the resources that we have, and we've made a shift within Power Hour to bring the word study component into that structure, allowing folks or students to have a full reading literacy time with their classroom teacher. And so that type of structure has allowed us to think differently about the other grade levels. But for right now, we're really just focused on trying to get all students what they need in a concentrated setting, if they need that, or in a setting where they're able to access. But you're right now it's only K and 1.
Okay, thank you. And the NWEA testing, that's 3 times a year?
Yes, it's 3 times a year. We have a fall, winter, and spring screener. However, as Dr. Scaza was mentioning, I spend a lot of time with the representatives from that company because it provides a considerable amount of data. And one of the features that we enjoy most is the amount of progress monitoring that is available for our staff to hone in on what those specific skills are as part of that program. Looking for where a student is in their zone of proximal development, providing opportunities and activities that are aligned with the Florida Center for Reading that really drill down to specific skills. It also assists us with our groupings during our workshop models in both ELA as well as math. So the level of versatility that it provides us, we feel fortunate to have those pieces available. And so part of the work that I do is to make sure that I understand all of the components so that I could share how the teachers can further navigate those reports and resources that are available so that they can further meet the needs of the students in front of them. So, and what's great is that the teachers really, they look forward to the data. They like to see the dashboard and the student profiles to see and share with each individual student their particular growth. And we have found that the more that folks understand the reports and what's available to them, the more excited they are to utilize those pieces of data to support student achievement. So we really are seeing a momentum that is really exciting.
Can you remind me, how many years have we been using that? Two?
I'm going to say, I would say 4.
Yeah, we're both looking at each other, both saying 4, so we think we're sticking with 4.
At the elementary level, where we were in full implementation was right during COVID. Yeah. So it really was a tough time. However, it was a goal for all teachers to utilize and become more familiar with the data and the reports. And I can say to you, they really have, and they bought into the information that it's providing them. It also will give you a trajectory as to what their expected proficiency levels on the MCAS are to be, as well as, you know, schools that they could apply to in high school. So it's really a sophisticated tool.
Great, thank you. With all of these enrichment programs, and this is K to 12, do we have enough staff to, I mean, do you have enough teachers like willing to do the after-school programs and the specialty and the vacation programs? And
we have
that?
The high school and middle school. I think it's primarily the high school math intervention, well-staffed. I believe Mrs. Russo has 11 10 teachers who are providing after-school intervention in the content area of math. We do not have good numbers at the elementary level yet. We're hoping to change that. We're working on staffing for the acceleration academies. We have to get people that are willing to give up time. Specifically, we're hoping to do something over the December break. That is a big ask, but we're hoping that we can get involvement and commitment from at least a handful of teachers to come in and run a small prep program. So we're working on it. We're advertising. We're trying to recruit and seeing if we're going to have a student participation as well. As we had mentioned earlier, it's just really important, in particular for our students who need to pass MCAS prior to the end of this school year to get their diploma, that we're providing with them with as many opportunities to seek tutorial services prior to taking the retest. We did just have, I want to say it was about 70 students retest in November at the high school level, so we're waiting on the results there, and then we're hoping to offer another retest. I believe it's in March. Thanks, guys.
And we have adequate resources financially to support all of this extra work? I know you mentioned that you had gotten a grant to help something. Did you mention that
we still have some of the ESSER 3 funds to address learning loss. The grant that Mrs. Russo procured for the district last school year comes from the Department of Early and Secondary Education. It's a large grant. She is keeping a close eye to see if it is going to be offered again, and I'll let her speak to that.
So right now, DESE has not put out any information about the Acceleration Academies for this coming school year. Last year, they released the information in December, so we're kind of hopeful that it might come out again. But last year, we got $127,000 to run the February and April Acceleration Academies, and we got great participation from our high school and middle school math staff because of the significant funding that they allocated for staffing needs. And we actually had more staff than we could get students to commit to coming over February and April break. We tried to lure them with breakfast, snacks, lunch. We were able to give Target gift cards as prizes and whatnot, but we still actually had more staffing because of how much money was offered to them.
That's great. And the math scores look better.
Yeah.
I mean, it works, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, from my vantage point, whatever resources that we have, we should be supporting,
Yeah, the students that attended those academies did perform pretty well in the retest last year. Of course, some students still failed, but our percentages were higher than what we have on a normal MCAS testing for those subgroups that tested. So hopefully they will offer that again. I don't know that we could match what the state did last year, but I know we're trying to offer a comparable thing for the December Academy that we're doing on our own, I think, with the ESSER grants.
Right. We need to use all of that ESSER money. We are not giving anybody any money back. Right?
We will use all the money.
Good.
Ms. Russo, before you leave, a quick question though, like how are we getting to the students? Is it selection by the staff member, or is it a student or a family actually raising their hands saying somebody needs assistance?
For those acceleration academies, we did it using some of the NWEA data, previous MCAS scores, and teacher recommendation based on how they were performing in class. Then we had translated letters, we had phone calls home to target specific students and specific subgroups that we know that we need to work with. For our current intervention programs, Dr. Skaza mentioned that we're running 10 of them right now. Those are also based off of the NWEA scores and teacher targeted students from their classes.
Okay, if we have students though that are concerned, are they able to reach out to, or families can they reach out to someone specific so that they could potentially be involved in some of the programs?
Absolutely. I would say right now our high school are even a little bit more flexible, those programs, than the middle school. There's a schedule posted all around the high school building, because we offer certain days of the week for targeted help, and if you want help in Algebra 1 or Geometry or Algebra 2, or we have some of our integrated math classes. So actually anyone can go to those if they are interested in support. Okay. At the middle school level, I'd say contact your math teacher, and they can reach out to make sure that we have a group running and what day of the week it is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So, Mr. Reyes, could you maybe fill us in on the equivalent of what's going on the ELA side? I mean, are there as many supports? Do you have enough? No.
As far as after school, we, unfortunately have not been able to find any English teachers to support. So at the high school, we do still have our reading teacher who is servicing a number of students. And yeah, so unfortunately, I'm still trying to recruit teachers, but given their, I guess, family and personal circumstances, they've been unable to offer a comparable program. The one thing we are focusing our attention on is the pilot of the curriculum resources at the middle and high school. And so I'm hoping that whatever program or whatever resource we decide at both buildings, it will have a significant impact on the scores, because it, I guess, allows teachers to focus a little less on the planning and gathering of resources, because everything is in one place, and it allows them to spend more time on giving feedback and looking at student work.
And that's the Amplify and Into Literature?
At the middle school, it's Amplify and Into Literature, and at the high school, it's Into Literature and BFW, or Bedford, Freeman, and Worth.
Mr. Reyes, also at the secondary level, you have some cohorts of teachers in working, being trained in reading ways?
Yes.
So additional content literacy strategies?
Yes, Ms. Murphy. So at the middle and high school, we've designated cohorts of teachers. At the middle school, it is, I believe, all English, math, science, and history teachers who have self-selected to be part of the first cohort. Also the intervention teachers, and I believe the ELL coordinator. And at the high school, we're working with 11th and 12th grade English, history, and chemistry teachers. And they're working with site leaders at both buildings who are supporting them and providing strategies and going into classrooms to give feedback.
I know that we've talked for many years about kind of being more intentional about reading and writing throughout all disciplines. And it sounds from your presentation that maybe in reality that wasn't always happening, but I'm glad to see it is a goal, right, that we have as a district, but that I'm just curious, like what strategies are we using to be more intentional in things like chemistry or, not your wheelhouse, or your wheelhouse, or Steph's.
That's the beauty of this program that we have affiliation with is, not to say that there wasn't attention and intention to literacy and other content areas other than English. It just wasn't as intentional with the resource pool as it is with what Reading Ways is offering us. So I'll let Mr. Reyes speak to it. He's more well-versed than I am with the materials that the Reading Way program offers.
Yeah, and so a little bit of background. Well, most secondary teachers are not trained to be teachers of reading and writing.
Exactly.
The reality is, however, every discipline has its own, like reading and chemistry. Reading a chemistry textbook is different from reading a poem or reading a document in history. And so content area teachers, I guess, they know how to read these things because they've, over the years, figured it out. They've had, I guess, supports along the way. But translating that into helping students to read and write within their discipline. That's a different skill set, and that's something that teachers have not been trained in. And part of the goal of our work with Reading Ways is to build their capacity to help students read and write within the context of their own disciplines. Now, what's different about Reading Ways is that rather than Reading Ways coming to us and offering workshops and then leaving, they are actually focusing on supporting our site leaders who are on site and who meet with their cohorts every other PLC cycle. And so what that does is it creates, I guess, a more sustained duration of training, plus because the site leaders are able to interact one-on-one with staff and offer feedback. The hope is that eventually, as Reading Ways builds the site leaders' capacity, the site leaders are building teachers' capacity, and then it's a more sustained model of professional development.
Great, thank you.
So before you go away, so how are we doing on site leaders? Like how many do we have? And
There is one at each building.
at the moment?
At the moment, yes.
Okay. So is it possible, if currently we don't have the supports available ELA-wise at, say, like the high school, are there people at other schools that could be tapped as like external potential tutors to be able to come in and support so that we can target? Are we able to reach out that way?
We can certainly do that. I can reach out to my counterparts in other.
I mean, it just seems like, you know, start in your own house and then expand to other areas, because maybe there are other folks that we can be tapping, and then aren't we expanding our wealth of knowledge kind of thing?
I agree. I think it's certainly time to kind of come back to the drawing board when we are looking to take what we have for existing intervention programs and where we can go from there. Like, if it comes down to recruiting in different areas or just re-advertising again, or, you know, whatever we can do to get people to, you know, be part of the intervention, the after-school intervention program. We just want to make sure that we're offering those services. So yeah, it certainly is opportunity to think uniquely about how to
It's like the
recruit.
cross-purpose, it's like cross-teaching, right? Like, so if you have the social studies person, you know, maybe it's time to like tap them on the shoulder and say, I think you could do it, right? Hop on over,
Yep.
and then you start to find more, you know, potential.
In-house, and then also, you know, just, you know,
External.
talking with, Patty Brown, just how, what are we doing for strategies for recruitment in general, right? Maybe there are education students at Framingham State that could use a couple of hours in the afternoon worth of, you know, income that we could recruit to and train to do that kind of work as well. You know, just, I know I've been working on this, you know, in lots of different pockets of the world in my professional life as well. Like, how do you recruit people when it seems like half the population of the United States has disappeared? So, you know, I'm supportive of whatever needs to, and if there's any resources that you need from us, please don't hesitate. You know, it's important work.
Well, thank you very much. Do you have any additional questions for Mr. Sanborn, Mrs. Russo, or Mr. Reyes?
I just would think it would be helpful to have you come back sooner rather than later, so that we're really seeing how things are going and or things aren't going. And so how do we take steps to, you know, help and support, whether it's financial or where's the money that we need to be targeting towards our budget discussion when we start that path in February. You know, like I don't want to wait until then to then find out something's working or something's not working.
Yeah, I will certainly make sure to update the committee moving forward, and if it involves asking these individuals and others to help support me with the information, we would be happy to do so.
Great. Thank you all for coming.
And I want to thank these guys for coming tonight. I think it's just a nice show of teamwork and camaraderie here. They were all willing to put some time aside with their families. Mr. Sanborn actually drove to New Hampshire and back to be here to support the Office of Teaching and Learning in the MCAS presentation tonight. So with the school committee's permission, I would like to allow these guys to head home.
Bye.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Wait, is there anything more you want to add, or?
No, I just want to thank you guys. I know that was a relatively long presentation. I tried to be concise, but I appreciate all of your questions and all of your thought and the words of support at the end there. And I will certainly make sure to come back with updates of where things stand with intervention and how we're addressing learning needs.
And I'll just say, you should not apologize for us taking extra time to have these kind of fruitful conversations, because that's why I do this. You know, I don't come here to have a half an hour meeting and, you know, be perfunctory. I want to know what's going on, and I want us as a community, not, you know, us as school committee members, but the greater community to understand, you know, where are we getting tripped up? Where are we having successes? What do we need to do as a community? And the only way we know that is by having these more in-depth conversations. So as far as I'm concerned, bring it. I mean, we want to have these conversations. Okay, with that being said, on to the minutes of November 8th.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will do a roll call vote. Mr. Caruso?
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan? Mrs. Hennessy?
I'd prefer to abstain since I was not around, so.
Okay. Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. The minutes are approved. And public participation. Public participation. Seeing no one. Action items. FY23 operating budget transfers. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some budget transfers for the committee's consideration tonight. At ECC, I'm requesting a transfer of $1,000 from the para line to offset overages in the general supplies line. At Goodnow, requesting a transfer of $4,305 from the para line to offset overages in instructional materials due to additional supplies needed. The principal line and the 12-month clerk line, due to budgeting issue by myself, I under-budgeted the principal line by $500, and we hired a clerk with a education stipend that I had not accounted for. So we're filling those lines. At Kane, requesting a transfer of $3,500 from the Whitcomb reading line to offset an overage in the Kane reading teacher line due to a Title I grant offset annual reconciliation. And I just wanted to speak to this a little bit more because you're going to see a couple of transfers relative to this during the remainder of my request. Every year when I'm developing the budget, and you know the timelines, late winter, early spring, I make some assumptions of what the next fiscal year's Title I allocation is going to be. We invest some of our Title I funds towards reading interventionists at 4 elementary schools and at Whitcomb. And what's happening here is that I had projected to offset the Whitcomb reading teacher line by roughly $250,000 from the grant. and the actual offset was closer to $300,000. So we had some $45,000 there in additional grant funding, which cleared some operating budget money. And then there were some smaller deficiencies at some of the elementaries where I didn't offset those lines by enough. So what I'm doing here is just transferring money from the Whitcomb line to those elementary lines where I didn't have enough of an offset projected by the grant. So just wanted to explain that.
Can I just interrupt one question just for the public's understanding? Our Title I is based on our poverty numbers, correct? So when you made the assumption that it was going to be around 250, wound up being 300, is that because of the numbers of?
The Title I funding level are based on the low-income percentages for the district. The annual allocations are based on, the total allocations are made by the federal government every year. So even though our actual percentage may not change, there may be some additional allocation that year, which gives us additional funding than what we had originally planned. I'm usually conservative in the planning of that offset because I would rather have more money than less money.
Of course.
So to
Thank
be
you.
completely transparent. Over at Richer, I'm requesting a transfer of $14,465 from the Whitcomb reading teacher line to offset overages in the Kane reading teacher line due to the Title I grant offset. Overages in the EL teacher line due to a hire that came in above the budgeted amount, and reconciling the assistant principal line because we had some staffing changes at that school. Thank you, Dr. Scaza. At Whitcomb, I'm requesting a transfer of $16,578 from the Whitcomb reading teacher line to offset overages in EL and math due to on-boarder positions that were hired above my budgeted rate, lane changes in the tech and health teacher line, and also correcting the budget line for one counselor stipend. At Marlborough High, requesting a transfer of $26,370 from the para line to offset overages in math and guidance due to lane changes, history due to a long-term sub, instructional materials, the AP line due to a retro payment that was done, and the 12-month line due to budget account correction for the clerical line there. We had a retirement and then a new hire, and there was going to be some overlap, and I misjudged how much money I had to put on that line to support the overlap. District-wide, requesting a transfer of $180,180. Utilizing the copy line and salary reserve to offset overages in the network tech line due to a salary adjustment, the clerical line due to overtime, contracted custodial services. We are still short 4 custodians, and I'm still utilizing a contracted company to support that need. Equipment costs due to both new classroom equipment needed for the 3 new classrooms here at ECC, as well as a small revamp that we did over at RPOC. And then the lower part of this transfer request is reconciling our summer services accounts. We had some lines in which we went over, and some lines in which we didn't utilize all of the funds. So I am reconciling those lines, and I'm keeping note of this so that I can make the proper changes in the FY24 budget. In the special education lines, I am requesting a total transfer of $564,115. We are making some transfers within the tuition accounts, utilizing some savings in the private day tuition line to cover some overages in the collaborative line. Also correcting a stipend payment location for school psychologists. And then the bottom part of that transfer is moving funds from the individual schools' behavior tech lines over to the contracted employee lines because we had to also utilize a contractor services company for that need as well. I know that was a lot. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that the committee may have.
Motion made and seconded to approve the transfers. Any discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Caruso?
Yes.
Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mrs. Hennessy?
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
And chair votes yes, they are approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Grants and donations. Let's see. Donor's Choice, Jarrick School, Miss Hammond's, yay, Miss Hammond, class $606.71.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? We'll go through them all and we'll vote once. Ohio Pile Prince, MHS, $149.99.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? And Locus Robotics, MPS, $4,480.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote on them all. Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Hennessy?
Yes.
Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews?
Yes.
Mr. Caruso?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. They are approved. Reports of school committee subcommittees. Mrs. Hennessy?
Thank you. We'll be having a policy subcommittee meeting tomorrow, because why not kick off before Thanksgiving with a policy subcommittee? Thank you for everyone, because I know we're having a tough time on getting dates, so we're going to get stuff through. Thank you.
Excellent. Mrs. Matthews, anything you want to add?
Not on negotiations, no.
Okay. Members Forum, would you like to tell us anything?
Yes, I have reviewed the warrant and asked that someone sign it, please.
Excellent, thank you.
And I would like to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving and time with your family
Excellent.
and friends or whomever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, anything tonight? Nothing? Okay. Miss Eileen, anything? I'm good. Okay. Any other members? Mrs. Hennessy?
I just wanted to say congratulations to the Dessert Theater group.
Yeah, exactly. Our own Jessica.
Own Jessica, exactly. So it was great to see that happening again, and we did actually have the opportunity to have dessert there, so that was really nice to have. So little things coming back in their own way, so that was good. And the Powder Puff football game was last night. Was tragic.
Oh, I'm guessing the juniors won.
Juniors.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, we're not going there. It was really cold, but it happened.
Cold, yeah.
So, yeah, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Yes.
Actually, I changed my mind.
Okay.
I just want to give a shout out to the Kane 5th grade run club who ran a 5K on Sunday, turkey trot, at the
Wow.
Lost Shoe Brewery. The Lost Shoe Brewery let them register and be official runners with bibs and all, so it was a fun time. It was cold, but it was fun.
Oh, that's great.
Wasn't there also another group, I think, from Richard that did Girls on the Run or something this weekend too?
I think it was Sunday, too.
Sunday also,
I think I saw
right?
that on social media, too,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a Girls on the Run program at, I believe, 3 of the 4 elementary schools, and there's a culminating
Okay.
event in Medford.
Yeah, but
Wow.
I think it moved this year.
I think it was Holden. I think that's what I saw on social
Okay.
media.
But
was
that
Holden.
happened this weekend too, and there were a
Yeah.
bunch of participants across the district, which was really fun to see.
Yeah.
So, yay.
Great. Excellent. Anything else? Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
You too.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any discussion? Mr. Caruso?
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews? Yes. Mr. Geary?
Yes.
Mrs. Hennessy?
Yep.
And what did you say your name was, Mrs. Ryan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned at 9:01.